G'day guys, Markee here, and welcome back to another episode of me reading Reddit relationship advice. Now, if you like this kind of content, I would like to direct your attention towards the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. With that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie. Let's get right into it. Cheers. Posted by user Confused Dad, titled, "Am I the asshole for blowing up at my wife over my daughter's school picture?" I, 60 male, have been married to my wife, 51 female, for around 15 years. We also have a beautiful daughter named Ha Young, 17 female, who is in her junior year of high school. Yesterday, after school, Ha Young came up to me and my wife and showed me her school pictures, both her individual photo and her group and grade photo. They were taken all the way back in February, but they had just arrived today. I complimented Ha Young and told her how beautiful she looked in the photos before telling her how proud I was to see her grow up throughout the ages, before showing my wife the pictures of our daughter. It didn't go the way that I thought and hoped it would. Instead of looking at it for a bit before saying something, my wife immediately pointed out to Ha Young that she was looking too downward at the camera and that her eyes looked strained and forced. I was a bit taken aback at first, but I decided to just keep listening. My wife then said to my daughter that she would have to have rehearsals for school pictures with her for next year, because in my wife's words, Ha Young still doesn't understand how to properly pose, smile, and look beautiful for a school picture. I was a bit irritated, but I let it slide. What set me off though was when my wife said, "Ha Young's picture is a fail. Honestly, Melissa looks like the prettiest out of everyone." Ha Young got quiet and said, "I'm gonna be honest, my picture this year is really bad compared to sophomore year." I got mad that evening. We had a huge argument in the living room. I told my wife that she was being cruel to our daughter, and since school pictures were over, there was no point being so picky about it. My wife retaliated, saying that even Ha Young says that she doesn't like how she looks in her school picture. I was just being honest. I'm only trying to help her. She then went into her room and started crying, saying that I don't understand her. I will admit that I raised my voice while we were having that argument, and I'm seriously sitting here questioning myself about whether I was the asshole or not. After our arguments, I knocked on Ha Young's door and I could tell that her expression was that she had listened to every piece of the argument. I feel bad because I may have overreacted to something as simple as school pictures. Plus, I ruined my daughter's evening and my wife's too, and I also made my wife cry. So Reddit, am I the asshole? In the comments, Nimi says, "I'm guessing based on the fake name that your wife is Korean. I know beauty standards there are super high and she could be projecting her own insecurities and maybe even comments that she got when she was young. Of course, this is not okay, but it could be worth sitting down with her and having a talk. Being 17 is tough as it is, and having your own parents festering insecurity will damage her even further." OP says, "You're right on that. Me and my wife are both Korean. I know the beauty standards there are super tough, so I'm probably going to talk to my wife privately to understand why she said that and check up on Ha Young a bit before talking with my wife. I know that she's super shaken up, so the best I can do is be the best father that I can. She will always be my Hanyul and Bada." My Korean mum and her gaggle of church friends did some serious damage to my self-esteem at her age. Please continue to protect your daughter. It may be acceptable in Korea to tear someone apart that you love, but it isn't here. So she needs to stop yesterday. Dude, this. My dad was a Korean Presbyterian minister before he retired. My mum has always been pretty chill, but he still cuts me down, and I'm in my mid-30s. He recently started doing it to my 2-year-old, and I 100% shut it down instantly and aggressively. OP, keep protecting your daughter, and possibly even talk to your child about the cultural factors at play here. Not the asshole. Gross. Not that it isn't gross at any age, but what do you even say about a 2-year-old? They're babies. Honestly, I would have cut the mum some slack if it wasn't for this line. Honestly, Melissa looked like the prettiest out of everyone. What kind of mum tells her daughter that her friends look prettier than her? If she had simply said that her daughter didn't look her best and had to work on her posing, I would let it go. But saying her daughter's friend looks prettier? Those are the words of a mother who is practiced and comfortable at cutting her daughter down. Not the asshole, OP. I realize everything comes back to therapy on here, but you really should consider signing your wife and daughter up for a few sessions, or do it as a family so the wife doesn't get defensive. Tears don't make a person right. Your wife is a cruel woman and not a good mother, based on what you've shared here today. I suspect your daughter will have a distant relationship with her mother in her adult years, which is 100% your wife's fault. I bet she counts the days until she can be away from a person like her. That woman is doing harm to your daughter's self-esteem. You did right by protecting your daughter. It's terrible when her own mother is her biggest bully. Does your wife complain about the way her own mother treats her? Is her mother very critical? Not the asshole. Do Korean women tend to have very high beauty and maintenance standards? And no, you're not in the wrong. Teenage girls are already extremely sensitive about their looks, so your compliment was kind and nurturing. OP says, I cannot speak on behalf of everyone. I know that the beauty standards are extremely tough there. I've heard people commenting about the fatness and skinniness of people's bodies. I've sometimes heard conversations about K-pop idols' bodies and faces, makeup, surgery, etc. Edit. This is not the first time my wife has said something like this. This is why I feel even more terrible, because I let my daughter suffer like this. I did give my wife a word or two, but I always told Ha Young that this was just the way that she spoke, and that she really did love her. I really want to cry right now, especially overhearing Ha Young crying herself to sleep yesterday night. She's always kept on a brave face around me and my wife, but it just breaks me even more now knowing that she feels like she can't talk to me either. I've failed her. Ha Young always asks me every morning if she looked beautiful. She would always ask me at mealtimes if she was eating too much. I'm so afraid of the damage that we both put her through for so long. I'm so scared that she's going to develop an eating disorder, and I'm going to make sure to set things straight with my wife and take care of my daughter better. She is always my first priority. Edit 2. I was taken off guard even though my wife has made responses like this in the past, because though it's not the first time, I had a little bit of hope left that she wouldn't point out Ha Young's appearance that outright in her school photo. Later that night in the comments, OP says, Hello everyone. Tonight, since my wife was working a night shift today, I decided that I'm going to be staying together with Ha Young for a daddy-daughter date. I know it doesn't matter whether we go out or not, all that matters is that I'm with her. I'm planning on making her some of her favorite foods and spending quality time as an apology for not being there when I should have been. She loves japchae, galbi, and cream bungyobang. I asked Ha Young beforehand whether she wanted to stay at home or to go out, and she wanted to stay home, and she chose to go with the first option. I'll let you know how it goes. Yeah, not the asshole here for blowing up at your wife over your daughter's school picture. I don't know if those were crocodile tears to get you to let up on your wife, or that she genuinely was remorseful for it, but given the Korean culture and how we know that people act in Korea as a whole, given, the surgery that people do, I'm going to say that it was more so crocodile tears, and this is an ingrained cultural thing. Unlearning those toxic cultural things that are ingrained in you from a child is very difficult, and a lot of people take on those things of like, well, I had it hard, so you have to have it hard too. That makes it right. That means that I didn't suffer for nothing. I'm gonna guess that's what the wife is going through here, and that's just continuing cultural trauma, and you know how your parents made you feel when you did that. Is it right for you to continue to put your own kids through that? I'm saying absolutely not. That's how I'm going about this one. And wife needs to have a good hard look at herself in the mirror and ask if it's worth alienating yourself from your daughter for bullying her like that. You can actively choose to not be an absolute piece of shit to your own daughter and bully her for having school photos. These school photos do not matter. There is nothing consequential about them, and yet you're just taking jabs at her. She's just a bully. Just a big bully. I don't blame you for blowing up at your wife over this one, OP. I would continue to stamp out this behavior until it's gone for good and she knows not to harass her own daughter like that anymore. And that may well end in divorce if she doesn't want to change. But I would say divorce is better than subjecting your child to bullying from their own parent who's supposed to love them. And now, onto the updates. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their generous comments and advice. As promised, here is the update. After my wife left for work, I decided to check up on my daughter. She was in her room doing homework, and I could tell by the forced expression that she was not okay. As she talked, everything began to make sense. My daughter overheard her mother shaming her in front of the other church mums. She heard them boasting about their kids, and her mother would use condescending modesty. For example, she's gained weight and she doesn't even study hard. She was tired of trying to surpass my wife's expectations. She couldn't stand it when my wife was in the house. She asked me, why am I her diamond? She cuts me to make me shine. How much more of this should I take? I prepared her all the foods that I promised to make, and she was hesitant but ate a lot more when my wife was around. She wanted to further talk with me. I then asked if she wanted me to tell my wife how she felt. Ha-Young said it was the only way to get her to listen, before telling me that she wants me to get a divorce. I asked her if she was absolutely sure, as it was something very serious. She said that she was fine with it. I'm just devastated that it's reached this point. When Ha-Young was at school, I had a conversation with my wife. I brought up Ha-Young's concerns along with mine. I asked my wife what made her put down my daughter on the day of the school picture incident, and she made excuses such as having bad days, hence she would accidentally release her anger and other emotions by yelling, the silent treatment, etc. I questioned further if there was anything in the past that was bothering her, which she replied snarkily, "Nothing is bothering me. I raised her into a better person. If you have problems with how I'm raising her, she's all yours. I don't want to argue anymore, especially with a sensitive, lazy person like you." We had a lot of arguments in the past on raising Ha-Young. This phrase was used in all of our arguments to shut me up. As Ha-Young was consistently used as an emotional punching bag and a trophy for my wife, this was the last straw. I told my wife that we were done, and then told her to pack up and leave. I thanked her for letting me realize my self-worth. After some time had passed, she had driven to her parents' house and was staying there for a bit. When Ha-Young came back, she noticed her mum's room was a lot barer than it was before and knew what had happened. I hugged Ha-Young and told her that I was sorry for the mess that I'd caused before reassuring her that nothing was her fault. I told her my ex-wife would come back a few more times to collect the rest of her stuff, but our relationship was over. This event shook me up a lot, but I know things will get better. I'm trying to make Ha-Young always feel loved. Ha-Young, you are my universe, and that will never change. In the comments, Danu Horus says, East Asia has crazy beauty standards, and I'm saying this as a Chinese woman, but rehearsals for effing school pictures is absolutely unhinged by their standards. Look down too much, eyes are too strained. That's stuff you would levy at a professional model, not a teenager. Mum has some very deep-seated self-hatred that she's projecting onto her daughter. This is the country where plastic surgery gifts are somewhat normalized. Korea has some messed up standards. Although, I have to say, Korean skincare products are top-notch. I always feel bad for the kids of parents who migrated here but kept the same cultural standards as back home. I remember reading somewhere that the culture in the home country continues to change and evolve, but the splinters, those who left, somehow remain strict and timeless. I was lucky that my parents are so easy and maybe gave me a little bit too much freedom that I never had to test it. My aunt was a nightmare. One of her daughters left for the other side of the globe, straight-A student, but nothing was good enough. Like, her daughter has a PhD, but got divorced and then had a kid out of wedlock after because she didn't want to marry her partner, though they already lived together. So my auntie never mentions her, even though she would come back to visit with her kid. As per my mum, she's glad that she didn't grow up in today's Korea. I think for Korea, it's the other way around. Koreans who migrated have less strict standards than the ones living in Korea. She told us that their school days include cram school and homework ended around 8 p.m., not 12 p.m. like for some kids nowadays. Plastic surgery was not expected or readily available in the 70s and 80s, and beauty standards weren't that nuts. And even if you didn't end up at one of the top 4 universities, you could make a comfortable living working at smaller companies. Chaebols really did the Korean society dirty. I don't really have too much to add to that one. I genuinely didn't predict the divorce. I didn't read ahead for this story, so take that as it is. I still stand by my words that divorce is the best outcome here now. Ha Young was the one who asked her dad to get divorced, so really, you could go and fix the relationship with therapy if you wanted to, but given how the mum reacted to the request for divorce, doesn't seem like she wanted to fight for that relationship or for her own child's. And you know what? Better to just let her cut ties and live her own life. As long as she's not doing more damage to Ha Young, absolute best case scenario. Given the circumstances, of course, there are better scenarios that could have existed, but given the circumstances, I like this one. Hopefully Ha Young heals and OP finds someone that is better than the ex-wife. I'm just going to put it like that. Someone that's better. He deserves better. Ha Young deserves better. Thank you for sharing the story with us, OP. Our next post is by user CompleteLoquat6405, titled, My 32 female, wife, 31 female, wants to become a full-time housewife after years of studying to become a doctor, but I'm totally against it. Hello. I've been with my wife since our second year of high school. From what I remember, she's always wanted to become a doctor, a pediatric doctor to be exact. While I kept changing my mind and was constantly unsure about what I wanted, my wife was extremely dedicated on wanting to become a pediatric doctor. I've seen her study her butt off in college and cry from frustration as she studied. Seeing her work so hard gave me the motivation to finish school and to become a lawyer. We've been each other's biggest supporters throughout this journey. From working odd jobs to support ourselves, having cheap dates at the park, and crying from stress and frustration, it was like finally seeing the end of the tunnel with my partner next to me the entire time. We got married right after I graduated from law school and started living in a bigger place with the money that we had saved together. She finished her internship this year and is about to legally become a licensed doctor. However, her happy tune about becoming a doctor suddenly changed. I'm not really sure when her obsession with becoming a housewife started, but seeing her go from being a career-oriented woman with hopes and dreams to wanting to become a housewife gave me severe whiplash. I just couldn't understand what could make her change her mind so suddenly. I tried asking her about it, and she said something along the lines of, I just want to cook and clean for you. Live a simple life. I assumed that maybe she was feeling lonely since I'd been working a lot, so I told her that we'd go on more dates and spend more time together, but again, she insisted that she wanted to be a housewife. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a housewife, but to give up your long years of studying and hard work to stay home and cook is absurd. We're already splitting the chores at home, and we've just been on very equal footing since forever. I just can't seem to read her. Maybe being a doctor just isn't for her, or perhaps she got bored. I just don't get it. I want her to do what makes her happy because I truly love her, and she's my entire world. But is stopping everything and throwing away the chance of having one of the most respectable jobs on earth just to stay home and do chores really worth it? Maybe I'm asking the wrong questions. Maybe she's trying to tell me something and I'm being dense. I wish I could read her mind, because I just don't get it. At the end of the day, I just want to know why, and maybe convince her otherwise. As much as I think that's a bad idea, it's still her life. But I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive myself if I let her throw her career away. In the comments, Toaster Child says, I worry about the lack of communication between you two. She's expressing a desire, but not saying why. You want to guess the reason, but don't want to ask her for some reason. You also want to talk her out of it without even knowing her reasoning. Are you totally against it no matter what, or just totally against it because you're making huge assumptions about why? OP replies, Hello. I must admit that my initial reaction wasn't great. I had given her all the reasons as to why it's not a good idea to throw away her hard work and assumed the possible reasonings all on my own. Thank you for pointing that out to me, as I haven't even noticed this myself. In the moment, I only thought about what I personally thought would be good for my wife, rather than what she thinks is good for her. Again, I thank you for your honesty. As others have commented, it's very possible that she's burnt out, but it also sounds to me like she might be panicking. She's on the verge of finally getting her license, which means that she'll no longer have the safety net of working under supervised licenses. She won't have folks, or at least as many folks, checking over her shoulder to make sure she's made the right call. Every decision she makes is on her from this point forward. That's a lot of pressure for any licensed professional, and she may be freaking out about it. It's normal for people to regress in some ways when they're coming up to a major milestone because they don't feel ready for the next phase of their lives. If this is anxiety or burnout, she may benefit from speaking to a therapist. OP replies, "Hello. Thank you for your response. This is something that hasn't even crossed my mind. The stress of proceeding all on her own and having the life or the future of a child in her hands must have caused her some great stress. Thank you for mentioning this. I'll keep this in mind when I have time to have a conversation about this with no disruption." It's possible that she may just be burnt out. Becoming a doctor is just so many years of work and stress, as you've seen. When was the last time that you two went on a holiday? Can you afford to go away for a short break? OP replies, "Hello. Yes. As of right now, I can totally afford it. However, we've been drowning in work, so whenever we do have some time for ourselves, we end up spending it at home. I believe that some time away would do her good. Thank you for suggesting this." Yeah, unless you can get her side of the story here and understand where she's coming from and why she's feeling this way, I don't think that you really can do much in this situation, OP. If it's a case of she just wants a few years break and then get back into pediatrics, that's completely fine. I think she's entitled to her own proclivities. Let a thousand blossoms bloom. I hope you guys can fix this one together. And now, on to the update. Hello everyone. I realize that it's been quite some time since I made this post, and I apologize for updating you all so late. If I'm being honest, this post slipped my mind completely. My wife and I were going through our own healing journey, and I simply wanted to focus on her. However, things are much better now, and both my wife and I are content with our lives. Here's a proper and pretty lengthy update for the ones who are curious about how my wife and I were holding up now. For one, she's working to finish her residency, and I'm so incredibly proud of her for pushing through, even with all of the odds against her. She's incredibly hardworking, and I'll always be there for her. Through the past few months, I had to revisit a lot of areas within our relationship. For one, the status of our relationship was worse than I imagined. There were major life events in her life that I would have never known about if I hadn't broken the growing wall between us. My wife has always been a hard worker, and because simple encouragement always seemed to be enough to boost her morale, I assumed that this was still the case, though I was terribly wrong. My wife needed a friend, a shoulder to lean on, a confidant, and a lover. But during her very difficult year, I was none of those things. As her wife, I failed to give her the proper love and support that she desperately needed and deserved. Not only was she burnt out, but because I unintentionally put work before her, I wounded her deeply. Our intimacy was practically non-existent, our conversations never went beyond surface-level subjects, and sometimes, the only time that we'd see one another was when one of us was already long asleep. Whenever I would ask her if she was okay, she always told me that she was fine, which I doubted, but since I didn't want to push her, I stopped asking. That is where I made my mistake. Asking wasn't enough. I was foolish. We barely saw each other, did anything together, shared words of endearment, or basked in each other's presence. Intimacy just seemed so foreign between us. Like a fool, I thought, hey, I asked if she's okay and she said she's fine. My job is done here. I never once tried to give her the reassurance that I was someone she could depend on, that I was ready to sit and listen, that she could complain to me about the same thing over and over again, and that I'd still listen with just as much attention. During a time of great stress, I was everything but helpful. The distance between us was growing pretty rapidly, and it's only after her insistence on becoming a housewife that this veil was lifted. Thanks to my initial post, I received a lot of helpful criticism both online and in real life. It took a lot of personal reflection. Initially, I thought applying what I was told would be a piece of cake, but seeing myself struggle to approach her made me realize how much we had truly grown apart. Little things like her hair, the bags under her eyes, or even her choices of clothes all changed. My wife has always been someone who enjoyed dressing up. Pastel colors are her favorite, weird earrings she finds from God knows where, shoes, makeup, sweets, those things. Little things that made her, suddenly stopped appearing. Again, I tried to argue that because she works in a hospital, her style of choice was most likely limited, but even when she was home, it was different. Guilt was eating me alive. My hands would tingle in pain just thinking about the burden that she must be carrying all on her own. I decided to stop acting oblivious. Even if I had to do something deemed as awkward or unnatural, I was going to push through because she deserves better. I began to initiate simple intimacy. If it meant simple hand-holding or working in the same room as her, I did it. I no longer asked if she was okay, but instead let her know that I would always be there for her whenever she needed me. She is my priority. Although it took some time, I was able to coax her into confiding in me again. We did revisit the housewife thing after a few months. She admitted that this feeling came from a deep sense of loneliness, stress, feeling burnt out, and the witness of a child's death. It was her first time witnessing a gradual, inevitable death, and had grown quite attached to both the child and the mother who happened to be our age. This made the entire tragedy even more painful. However, my wife is still a doctor and things move quickly. She tried forgetting about it and moving on, but the realization of the weight she carries as a health professional kind of became burdening. She began questioning her years of study, her skill, her abilities. Things that she took great pride in turned into insecurities. Eventually, she came across some aesthetically pleasing life as a housewife content on YouTube. The idea of never having to go through such stress and heartbreak seemed so freeing to her, no longer having to see children in poor conditions, focusing on herself, her home, her own personal life, and our relationship. To be completely honest, I didn't know how to comfort her. For one, I'm not a health professional. Whenever I curiously looked at her notes, my head would start spinning, seeing words that seemed so foreign. Our careers differ so much from one another that I didn't know what would be appropriate to say. What can you possibly say to someone going through this type of heartbreak? With my limited knowledge, I told her that she shouldn't carry that burden and blame herself. People are quick to run to doctors whenever they get the slightest symptoms because they know that a doctor knows best. You naturally bring comfort, a sense of relief and safety. To me, she is no different than a superhero. The joy she brought to that child stuck with her right until her final moments, and that's something that she should be proud of. The child was able to live a little longer and experience so much joy because of her kindness and expertise. We revisited the conversation a lot, and every time I listened. Eventually, she gained a lot more confidence. She relied on her supervisor as well, who has been in the field way before either of us were born. Seeing her get better day by day made me so incredibly happy. We're at such a great place in our relationship right now. I love hearing her voice, seeing her, being near her, and being there for her. I missed her so much. I don't know how we went so long without speaking properly. She's my best friend, my family. I want to say that I wish I had known what to do sooner, but this entire incident was necessary. I believe it is. It brought us so much closer. We are family, and speaking about heavy subjects shouldn't be odd between us. I learned a lot about my wife, myself, and our relationship. I'm very happy with how things are going. Although we're still busy, we always find some time for ourselves. We also recently adopted 2 cats. I know a lot of people suggested that perhaps my wife was getting baby fever, but I assure you, our kittens definitely taught us that kids probably aren't meant for us. Not anytime soon, anyway. Thank you again for being so kind and honest with me. I'm excited to learn more and deepen our emotional connection, and I can only see a brighter future ahead. In the comments, Sorry Lil Sis says, "It's great if things are better now, but one note, your wife needs to see a mental health professional on the regular for the rest of her career. Ideally, one that has experience dealing with other medical practitioners. I have more than a few health professionals in my family and friends, and so many of them need to see a psychologist and just skimp on it or just auto-medicate. It's great that you're here to support her, but frankly, you are not equipped to do that long term. It's a job that needs someone specialized on it. Otherwise, her job is going to spill on your relationship again and again. OP replies, "Thank you. I also agree that seeing a mental health professional would be helpful to her. She's never been to therapy or anything like that, so it would definitely be something new for her." Cat Chris says, "Honestly, this is very refreshing. I agree with the other posters that your wife does need to set up someone or something to be her support system, like a counselor. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that her work offers these things. It's maintenance like trimming grass or toenails, and should not be viewed as something shameful at all." OP says, "Thank you. I absolutely agree. My wife grew up in an environment where mental health is viewed as something that eventually passes like a common cold, so seeking mental health support has never been a thought. However, it is something that we most definitely want to look into now that we've distanced ourselves from said environment." Quote, "Eventually she came across some aesthetically pleasing life as a housewife content on YouTube. Pro tip out there for everyone. Effectively all of this content is lying to you. It's fundamentally a contradiction because by creating the content, they are working. They aren't housewives, they are actor content creators. They're also rich enough to pay people to do the real housework while they make videos of making cereal from scratch or making frickin' paper and crayons from scratch." Being in the medical field is absolutely terrifying. Yes, and internship year is when most doctors come to that realization, during the busiest and most stressful year of their careers. Interns are regularly sleep-deprived because of their insane schedules, and their attendings often offer very little in the way of support or guidance. That was my very first thought. As soon as OP said pediatrics, my husband's career has been spent in the ER of a regular hospital. When time is of the essence, ambulances will bring kids to his ER because they can summon a helicopter to take them to the nearest children's hospital and try to stabilize them in the meantime, but sometimes it's just too late. He doesn't strictly deal with children, and I can always tell when he comes home in the morning if they've lost a child. At least his hospital system is very understanding. They always offer counseling and PTO to staff who've had to deal with something particularly traumatizing, and there've been a few of those. I can't even imagine treating sick children exclusively. For me, the successes would never make up for the losses. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed or got something from it. I do hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.